Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another VIP episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you an epic episode tonight. We have, well, it's pretty spooky, dark reading, and it's called Global Death Cult. That's right, we have William Ramsey back for his second time, and I thought he nailed it with The Smiley Face Killers, which was an amazing documentary, an amazing investigative journalism adventure, really, and dark as well. But this is beyond anything I ever imagined. His most recent book, Global Death Cult, I don't want to give too much away before we get into the mix. Also, if you don't want to give too much away, but you want to donate something, cruise over to heroparanormal.com, hit that subscribe button, and that will take you to Podbean. And for the price of a barista cup of coffee a month, you're in the inner circle. You can also do the same thing by means of Patreon. If you go to Patreon, Hero Paranormal is on there. Anyway, without further ado, William Ramsey, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast, my man.
Ryan, how's it going?
Yeah, epic book, my man. I was worried, that I would not be able to get into the book given the dark subject matter, but I could not put it down. The occult aspects of the Q9A, which I had never heard about, and I kind of thought I had a pulse on everything weird, but that really drew me into the reading, which, if I can read a quick example for the listeners, would that be okay?
Yeah, please go ahead and read it.
Okay, so the occult aspects. So, the O9A, the Order of Nine Angles, the name of the book is Global Death Cult. And it goes into, for example, the priest then takes the crystal, repeats the same phrase 3 times. The couple engage in sexual magic and are instructed to visualize a hole opening in the space above them with energy from the Stargate flowing down, encompassing them. Drawing this energy into the crystal, the couple buries it into the hill and chant in Latin. I'll murder it, so I'll just say it in English. Let the earth bring forth Lucifer. And it goes on to note that Lucifer is Prometheus and the bringer of light. But holy cow, my man. I could keep reading, but, the occult workings and rituals that these guys are involved in is wild.
Yeah. It's crazy. I don't think it's a huge group, but I think that they're pretty extreme, and I think that if you read the book, I think their position is that they are extreme.
And that's the scariest part. Some of the ceremonial rituals involve sacrifice. They take it really seriously, and the sacrifices are usually to the Prince of Darkness or his bride, and they proclaim human sacrifice as powerful magic. Now, what's really scary is the global membership is estimated at around 2,000. Is that right?
I think so. That's what other people have guessed. It's a guesstimation because it's hard to get somebody to tell you what's going on inside, but that's what other researchers have determined. But also, this idea is they don't even necessarily have to be a member of the ONA. They could just be an individual who believes in everything the ONA puts out, and not actually join the group. So the total influence is I don't know. I don't know what that is. But I think in the book I show that it has surfaced recently. So all these cases, William von Nudegem, this murders and things like that it's becoming more predominant.
Yeah, and I thought you knocked it out of the park with the Smiley Face Killers. That was in my opinion, holy cow. I didn't know how anybody could ever do anything better than that. And then this is like a 1-2 punch. I'd like to get into some of the strange aspects of the Order of Nine Angles, specifically the belief that they are a new type or a new breed of human being, and sinister tribes, and they have the names. Drek is another wild one.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of different elements. I think that their view, at least as if their people are adhering to their principles, they are Homo Galacticus. So that's a new man. It's kind of a play on kind of like the Nazi new man, but they are going to go to the stars, and then people holding them back are like the Homo Hubriati or the mundanes, and you have a right to call them. They are people preventing the evolution of man. So I think that the ONA is part of it, has this kind of evolutionary function that I think that the Nazis had, and I think that the Nazi influence in this group, I think, is an important aspect of the group, because I think that they see themselves as engines of evolution, and they are the highest evolutionary, and everybody else is mundane or just not fit for the future.
It is so freaky. And, just all things being what they are, I try to stay even keel politically, as close to the middle as possible, but I tend to lean, a little bit to the right, occasionally conservatively. And, this was a real eye-opener that, I didn't know that groups like this existed, first of all, and that's why I think it's a must-read for everyone. But, it's kind of funny, the people that it ensnares and how quickly it can just grab their lives. There's another kind of going off what you were mentioning, the black magic, that's really freaky, and where it goes into the dark gods. If I can read another quick passage just to...
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
According to tradition, the dark gods are waiting in what may be described as a parallel universe. They return to Earth and thus our spatial causal universe. Essentially, the universe of dark gods is acausal, and the two universes may be represented as being joined by various stargates, or more accurately, nexions. And I mean, wow, interdimensionality and neo-Nazism somehow packaged and sold to the masses.
Right. Yeah, no, it's incredible. So I think that's really kind of the 9 angles. There's the human gate, and then the dark gods gate, or the gate of the gods, and that's part of the angles, goes through the planets, and then they're supposed to draw these dark energies down into the world. So I think, they make, their view is that these are the old kind of Sumerian gods back from the beginning of kind of human history, going back to Sumer, pre-Babylonian.
Wow. I mean, and the people are very intelligent that are drawn into this, which is like, I was so blown away. It's just something in the book I still can't get my mind around, is the Atomwaffen division, which, can we talk about the images they use and some of the crimes they committed? These guys mean business.
Yeah, no, it's very serious. And I think that that's why I kind of titled it The Slaughter of the Innocents, because a lot of people have died. We don't know the totality of the crimes of the ONA. I know what I have in the book, but their whole view is to commit crimes and not get caught. And that's kind of like how this ideology came out from the UK and permeates now, at least in part, the Atomwaffen division, which was really fairly recently started, 2015. And then you had these guys died, these 2 Himmelman and Onashuk, and then a kid here who was an affiliated Atomwaffen guy's name was Woodward, who's still in jail in Orange, California, took a guy out at night, a young man by the name of Blaise Bernstein, stabbed him 20 times, buried him in a shallow grave. It's probably a racially motivated murder. And then another guy, Giampa, who killed his girlfriend's parents. So they were innocents too. But they were concerned that their daughter was with the kind of post-Hitler, post-Crowley kind of neo-Nazi, and their concerns were correct, because they ended up getting killed. And then Giampa tried to kill himself, but I think he's still alive. So he's still being tried. So these are all fairly recent crimes, and one of the things that kind of struck me about Atomwaffen, and you can see some of these other guys, is that the ideology of the ONA has, in part, influenced, in my opinion, Atomwaffen, and I think I showed that in the book, that these guys are trying to fulfill this notion that ONA has of insight roles, where you kind of join either the military or hyper aggressive Islam and learn from that experience. So you see the two members in that part of the book, Russell and Devin Arthur's. One became a far-right Islamist, and then the other one was joining the National Guard. So you can see this kind of attempt to infiltrate and get training that the ONA doctrines would encourage people to do. And actually, if you're going through the original septenary way or the sevenfold way, that's one of your things, is to fulfill an insight role. And that's kind of one of the strange elements of the ideology, is that it's so much different than and unique than the Temple of Set, the Temple of the Church of Satan, or even Crowley's OTO. So, but they still are very lethal and very malevolent.
Yeah, so lethal and extreme. And I'm glad you brought up the case of Blaze Bernstein. I mean, age 19, it really kind of brought home how extreme they went. He was stabbed in the neck, I think, and I think he said 20 times. I mean, it's crazy. And the other story you mentioned, they killed, or where he killed both parents, and I believe
Giampa was his name.
Yeah, later, is it not true that the Atomwaffen division put his face on a poster that read "Love Conquers All"?
Yes, so they kind of made fun of it, yeah. And they have all these posters and elements like that, and that seems to be one of the elements to join Atomwaffen, is to go on kind of a posterizing mission and spread Atomwaffen propaganda at college campuses. That seems to be one of the initiatory steps. So you'll see a lot of their, and I didn't include them all, but there's tons of posters of Atomwaffen. They have one of the head of YouTube hanging from a rope. I mean, really aggressive stuff. So was it Wojoki? Because she kicked them off of YouTube, and then they got kicked out of BitChute. So they've been kicked out of a variety of things. But they're supposedly disbanded now. Some of those guys are still around, so they may just go by a different name now. And Atomwaffen's really an aggressive group of people, and their utopia is somebody else's post-apocalyptic nightmare. So they really want this kind of race war and hyper-violent. At least that's what it's in their kind of writings and their relationship, and you can see that in the book, what they're talking about. How like they're talking about putting bodies in big mass graves and things like that. So very dangerous group of people.
Yeah, and they also, it seems to me that you could almost write some of these individuals that are, you could write books about each individual. I mean, David Myatt, holy cow, you start to like the guy as you're reading about him at first, just because he's so genius and intelligent. But then the extremes that he goes, and I'm glad that you mentioned the Temple of Set and some of those strange communications. Can you explain to the listeners the strange communications and all of the aliases that he would use?
Right. So David Myatt was really probably at least the front for the group. And he's either writing everything under a variety of aliases. So it'd be David Myatt, Stephen Brown, Anton Long. But he has claimed that he was a front for 12 other people writing for the group, and now their output is massive. So even at the very beginning, they were putting out these little manuscripts back in the 70s and 80s, and it grew into books and then influencing things. But Myatt, during the formulation of Order of Nine Angles doctrines, was in communication with Michael Aquino of the Temple of Set. And so this communication that he wanted with them was to indicate that his group was so much different than the Temple of Set. And he had a deep knowledge of the doctrines of the Temple of Set and Crowley. And so he's saying what distinguishes my group from yours is our attitude towards schooling. And so I include that. That has a whole chapter in the book. It's the Satanic Letters of Stephen Brown. But it's also interesting in those letters because the Temple of Set members are saying, we've gone out to meet you, and it's the same person under different names. So somebody's met David Myatt, and somebody's met Stephen Brown, and I think somebody met Anton Long, and they all look the same. And so there is an issue about what these pseudonyms are, but in my opinion, they're all. I mean, David Myatt is a very important figure in the ONA, and probably its founder. And then I also have a chapter on some of the current heads. So some of these people are still around, and it's very scary to think that this sophisticated, very, like you said, very intelligent ideology has these adherents all over the globe.
And the way just like a chameleon, or actually they use the term shapeshifter, which is so scary. And they believe that they actually become shapeshifters, at least in ideology, but they really, in a very real sense, the way they infiltrate even religion. I mean, going to extremes, I believe, becoming a monk, and then, like you mentioned before, joining the military just for the reason of getting all the information.
Right, and I think my book shows, like, some other journalists have looked at Atomwaffen or the ONA for kind of a view of the far right, but I look at them as occultists who are in the far right, and they are definitely infiltrating. And some of these people are known in the news because they've been arrested and thrown in jail, or they're under, they're being watched by governments in the UK and the US, but there's probably others unknown that really aren't in the public who are members who you just wouldn't know. And that whole shape-shifting thing is that, and I reflected in some of their fictional writings, which are really more of like fables, learning fables or learning tales, is that they're supposed to look like normal, ordinary people. And that's kind of another element of the ONA ideology that's scary, is that they don't look like a caricature of a Satanist like Anton LaVey or Michael Aquino, who you could go, this guy's odd, but they're encouraged just to fit in and not really be obviously noticeable. So they have this idea of shape-shifting, shrenching. So there's a lot of like old English terms or concepts that go into this group. And it's pretty remarkable that they've really kind of been under the radar, I think, for decades. And there's been some comments about them, but I don't think the totality of their ideology was really accessible until the internet, probably mid-90s, and it's slowly kind of being compiled. But I think, like I said, I don't think that they're a huge group, but I think that the people who are the adherents are very lethal and dangerous people.
Yeah, they seem to be getting a lot more done per person than other groups, and I mean, like, instantly. And those fables that you discuss, the writings, they're so creepy of how you go about targeting somebody for culling, which is basically sacrifice or killing, and how it seems in almost all the fables there is at least a mention of the character or the person doing the crime feeling like they become something subhuman, and the witnesses notice something that's not human as well, which I thought was just eerie.
Right. So I think that that's really it, is they're presencing these dark forces. So they're encouraged to presence the dark forces at night. And almost all of those tales happen at night. The one that I included was Lurker of the Night, where a guy gets on a motorcycle and travels to another city, commits a crime, and then leaves and the whole thing is about committing a crime and not being detected. So, yeah, it's very creepy, and it's very different. It's almost druidic in their outlook, where they're at night. One of their steps in their thing is to go out into the forest and lie down from sundown to sunset. So it's almost like they're presencing that creepy element of a forest or light. If you ever gone hiking or something like that, when it's nighttime, there's all kinds of noises in the forest that's alive at night. And I think that is something, this kind of druidic, ancient forest element is suffused in these members' ideas, where they're very comfortable. And you'll see pictures of some of these people in all black outfits in the forest, and I have there's a lot of pictures that I didn't put in. And that's like their concept of the Noctulian, and Noctulius is a bat. So there's actually pictures of ONA and Atomwaffen members holding flags with the ONA bat symbol, the Noctulian symbol. So they identify with this kind of thing that flies and sees at night.
Yeah, and the fervent belief in this is just unreal. The Sue Vanarath, I'm probably saying that wrong.
Vanarath, right.
And the Order of Nine ideology, and how it made her believe she was a sex goddess with superior intellect, entitled to cull the inferior. And can we talk about that case a bit? That was stunning.
Yeah, that's an incredible case, because it's fairly recent, 2015, and she was involved. She was, I think, a Thai. Suvana Rath is she was Asian, and she was on Iron March. She was on this online forum that is now defunct, but it was for far right, and she was posting on there, and she was writing kind of these weird, kind of fictional stories as well. There's evidence of that, but she met somebody online by the name of Glabal, and they started kind of a relationship online, and they wanted to, after their discussions online, they wanted to emulate the Columbine massacre, and they idealized these two guys. It was I can't remember their names, the two guys from Columbine.
Right.
But they wanted to redo this, so they planned a Valentine's Day massacre at a shopping mall in Halifax in Canada. So she flew from outside, she was from outside Chicago. She flew from Chicago to Halifax, and the police were tipped off. But she was planning to go see her online paramour, kill his parents, and then go do this slaughter with guns. And luckily they weren't very proficient with weaponry, but he ended up killing himself. His name was Glabal. Instead of killing his parents, he killed himself, and then she went to jail with another accomplice. But all of her records online show her interest in neo-Nazi imagery and occult imagery, and like you said, she thought of herself as a sex goddess. She used the term Cole, which is kind of specific to the ONA, and she thought that the mundanes had to be cold. So she had this kind of ideology. Now she's in jail for the rest of her life, it looks like. And they had enough evidence really I quote from the court case, they had enough evidence in all of her chat logs with this guy Glabal where they plotted to commit this massacre.
Wow. And it is like, my favorite chapter, and not giving away too much, was asking the right effing questions. And, it starts getting into the smiley face possibly being a sign of global membership. Is that, first of all, it's amazing how you've connected the dots between Atomwaffen, Order of Nine Angles, and even the smiley face killers. Could we go into some of the connections between these groups?
Well, you see that kind of moving at night, right? So the whole smiley face phenomenon is young men being out at bars or something, disappearing and being found in water. And there's always a smiley face associated with it. And the smiley face seems to be permeates a lot of, not just this group, but it permeates other groups. But one researcher found on this group's websites the smiley face symbol, two of their informational websites. So what is it doing there? And is there a connection between some of these deaths and another occult group? I don't have any evidence to that, but there's something very strange happening. And it wasn't just pointed out with me. I did 2 interviews with Igor Sarsky, and I include those in the back of the book so people can read through those or listen to them online. And there's something very strange and very underground going on, and you can see that in this book. And I don't think the government's really asking the right questions. They kind of have a sense that the ONA is bad news, but I don't think that this is a different type of criminal organization. They believe they're above the law, and I include that segment in I think the 4th chapter where they talk about, hey, we're not subject to any other law. So the real question, there's a lot of questions about what's going on, but Atomwaffen too. You don't know what these guys are doing at night. They're very skilled with the dark web, and that was something that people speculated. The smiley face killers or whoever's doing that are also sophisticated with the dark web and have thought out and planned some stuff. And I think that this book also shows an insight into some of this dark literature that really people don't know much about. But there's enough literature out there for people that should know about. And, there's just very odd overlapping elements from this group and some of this other stuff that I've studied, such as the smiley face killer. So, I don't know. I don't have any evidence other than what I have included in this book, but I do think that the government or Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security needs to start asking the right questions, no question.
Yeah, because killing seems like this is just not a big deal to them. And you mentioned that, a lot of the criminals covered in the book have relatively short prison sentences of 5 years or less. And prison, in my opinion, has a tendency to make people more aggressive, or at least solidify, as you put it in the book, they solidify the commitment to the cause.
Right. Well, there's a very famous person who spent time in prison too. His name was Adolf Hitler, and when he got out, it made him more committed. So these guys, the head of Atomwaffen is in for a while, and some of these other characters, they have very short sentences. So it's something for people to be very concerned about. And these ideas, and I think the society right now really is in a hyper conflicted element where you have the far left and far right, Antifa. And I don't see a lot of, I'm not optimistic about the future, really, because I just don't see these sides coming together in a kind of spirit of amity. So I would assume that I think that people need to really watch out. I mean, I think that this book is really a warning to parents and to other people that if your kids are involved and the people who they've found to go to get into these groups are young, impressionable people who get seduced by it. So if you look at like Atomwaffen, all these guys are very young, teenagers, college age. So, and if they have that kind of lethal mentality, people need to really watch out. And the parents of Giampa's girlfriend were concerned, but they ended up getting murdered. I mean, they got shot. So, and even the kids, these two kids, Himmelman and Onishuk, they got involved in Atomwaffen and ended up getting killed. But I don't think their parents really knew the totality of how deep they were involved with Atomwaffen. I think that there's interviews with the dad of Onishuk, and he just didn't seem to know the symbols. He didn't know what his son was talking about. He didn't understand the references to Varg-Vikernes or Burzum or some of these far-right pagan Satanists really in like Norwegian black metal. So he didn't quite get how deep his son was involved, and then it was too late. And I think there was a researcher, his name is Picciolini, who was a Nazi and got out. He said these kids didn't have time to become better men. They were young and impressionable, so they didn't have a time to get out of these very dark environments that's just a disaster. I mean, Nazism is a disaster for human beings, and it's a disaster for people who are involved in it and people who are victims of it. And so it's really a shame to think that these ideas are still out there after World War II, but I think that it's in a very small group. But I think that the consequences are so extreme. Like, I think that it's a death cult. So I think that that's really the scary thing, is that it's not something where, people are talking about basket weaving or something. They're talking about killing people and really lethal ideas. So people really need to be afraid and be concerned, really concerned about what's happening. The parents of Blaise Bernstein are another example. They had no idea what happened to their son. They didn't know that their son could be caught up in this very lethal racism. And he had a whole life ahead of him. He was a talented kid with a future. He went to University of Pennsylvania, so he had opportunities on the horizon that he'll never, ever reach because somebody stabbed him 20 times in a park over these crazed ideologies. And the question I ask is, like, is Woodward trying, was that his kill? Was that a cult? Was that something that he did to go up some kind of ladder at a cult? I don't know, but I don't think anybody's asking that question. And the other thing is that he hasn't even been tried yet. The trial is still there. So these are very current events, too. I think I've stated that before, but yeah. So
yeah,
really crazy.
The current nature of it makes I think it's very relevant. And I'm glad you brought up the Norwegian death metal, because it really is, as the title suggests, a global death cult. Looking at all of the countries, I mean, it's unbelievable that it seems like it's everywhere.
Well, if you look at that section of the Nexians, right, so they call it the Nexian, somebody else would call it something else, but these little groups are interspersed, and their presence is on the internet. So you can tell that they're there. I don't know the totality of how big these groups are, but there's kind of like a cult watcher in Serbia saying, hey, there's a dangerous group in our country. You got to really watch out. And so I tried to include as many as there are there that may be defunct. There's all kinds of Wayback Machines that show these groups, like the Temple of Blood was active and now not active. So it's hard to really ascertain, as me as just an independent investigative journalist, to the totality. But the evidence is there that these cells that are designed, the idea of these cells as designed by ONA founders, are extant and operating. And there was something happened in Russia where this kid got ONA literature and burned down a church. So That's what those guys were doing in Norway. They were burning churches and stuff like that, ancient churches. So really dangerous, like worldwide phenomenon. And these people are in contact with each other. You can tell that they're reading each other. Different nations, they're reading each other's material, and they have links to each other in different countries. And it's really crazy.
And the way that it seems like it's working on various levels. I think the way that the occult comes in, that just knocked me off my seat especially with the the Myatt section. And it's like, it seems like he reached for just about everything, including Crowley, which you've studied significantly, and took a lot from everyone and kind of, in my opinion, sort of made his own religion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
Somebody of high intelligence. And if you look at some of the literature, the early literature of the ONA, they had references to Crowley that they've taken out. So they passed through, and I think I show in that first chapter about Myatt that he was in a Thelemic organization. So he had absorbed Crowley, and there's manuscripts where he's clearly analyzed the Book of the Law. He ties it to Nietzsche, and I think that's what's really scary. And there's other ideas within the ONA, a lot of interesting psychological understanding, deeper Jungian ideas, and I think that the psychological impact of this ideology on people is very profound, but also very malevolent. And I think that they really are searching for sort of like weeding out and truly trying to find smart, lethal people. And it really is incredible, this occult element, this cult esoteric Nazism or cult Nazism that really starts with Myatt and kind of goes through. Like they still record all that stuff. Eurofien, the birth of Hitler, 1889. So their time is this. Their view of Hitler is like as an avatar, not as an antichrist. So Hitler is, if that's your hero, there's real problems. I mean, just the millions of people who died under that whole regime is just an atrocity. I mean, Holocaust, 1/8 of the Russian population died, 1/4 were injured in the war, and the Nazis were just going to kill off the Poles. They were just taking their time. If that war would have continued another 10 years, there would be no Polish people left. They were going to kill them all off. So that attitude is hyper malevolent.
And I found it interesting. Somebody I had to mention was James Mason, this unassuming neo-Nazi who wanted to destroy the system and was living off of public assistance and eating in Denver soup kitchens. I mean, it seems so wild that these, and they write astounding books that are just gobbled up by the believers.
Yeah. So his was Siege. He actually took that title from the Weathermen, so a far-left group that was doing bombings. So his view was also they need to do their siege against the system as well, not from the far right. And a lot of these guys in Adamwaffen really admired him. It became required reading for some of these people to read Siege, which was super racist. And when you really read Siege, you see his admiration for these Nazi serial killers or rage killers who killed all these people, and I include them in the book. Spizak, who a lot of people don't know about, and who else? It's one guy, his name was Reynolds, who he knew. So he knows these people in the Nazi movement, and I think it's important for people to understand because that's the way these guys are thinking, is that, hey, these guys are doing it right. The other was James Vaughn, Paul Joseph Franklin, who he knew, and who shot Vernon Jordan. He was friends with Bill Clinton, and all these other, what was the other guy? Larry Flint. She shot Larry Flint. So this was a kind of neo-Nazi serial killer traveling around killing people, and that's their ideal. And then Fred Cowan was a Nazi killer. So these are people that he's referencing, and of all people, Charles Manson. So he's in communication with Charles Manson, and Adamwaffen is going to this cave in Nevada to do things like Manson did. And so it's just really remarkable what these guys are reading and what they're thinking.
And like you said, the posters, the propaganda is it's just so mind blowing. I can't, it's hard. It's something everybody really has to like. The book is a must read, in my opinion. I think you've taken a very difficult topic, and even though it's a dark read, I think it's a must read.
It's happening. It's metastasizing. It's out there. There's vulnerable kids on the internet. So people need to really be afraid and be careful. And there's a lot of stories in there of these, like, Satanist soldiers, Satanist right-wingers. I included this one guy, Smith, who a lot of people don't know about, William Jared Smith, the base, where they did some blot ritual and cut off the head of a goat. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about killing Antifa members and stuff like that before they got arrested. So these were huge. There's a lot of people who got arrested, and I don't think the media really captured the totality of it, of how many of these guys got put in jail. But yeah, I think that anybody, I think that this is something that's going to be a problem in the U.S. for at least the next 25 years. Is these guys are young; they're all in their 20s, mm-hmm. And who knows who they're going to find in jail and who they're going to find in other places online. So. It's really perilous times. I'm not optimistic.
And it seems like only the extreme ones are getting caught. I could see how easy it would be, as the literature says, to just seep between the cracks and be that mortar between the bricks and get jobs involved with law enforcement or the clergy or all these various creepy methods of getting information. And man, I think you just tackled a very difficult subject and did so with relentless integrity, in my opinion. I thought you pulled off the impossible, connecting the dots with the smiley face killers, but these O9A or the Order of Nine Angle, the connections are beyond amazing. They're next level epic contribution. Everyone should definitely read it, just because it reminds us of the true nature and the true evil that actually still exists in the world.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. And it's got 482 footnotes, so everything's referenced. It's not like I did anything fictional. It's all nonfiction. It's all just from other sources, and their own writings give them away. So I do recommend people. I think I'm pleased with this, and I do think that this is out there. It's hard to believe that people would want to go back to Nazism. So it's just these people are really misguided and really lethal. I think they're very dangerous people, so you got to really watch out if these people are out there. I don't think there's holding them, but some of these people who ended up dead didn't know. This poor kid, Blaise Berdenstein, the parents of Giampa killed, and so I think that it's definitely. I think this book functions as a warning. Don't let it happen to you, your family, your children.
Yeah, because it happens so swiftly. You can't say, oh, this is just a phase. It seems like by the time the phase starts, if you don't nip it in the bud, it's going to immediately turn into this crazy thing that exists now in the world. I guess it always has, and it's just true evil. For our listeners, where's the best place to purchase the book? I wish I could order it for other people. It's that good. Where can they pick it up, and where can they keep up with everything that you're doing?
Well, I do post. I kind of got rid of Facebook and Twitter. You can find the book on my website, WilliamRamseyInvestigates.com, and you can buy it on Amazon. It should be available worldwide. I've got some good reviews so far, and I'm trying to post a lot more on my Patreon page under William Ramsey Investigates, so if people want to go there, they can see some of the stuff that didn't make it into the book. There's a lot that didn't make it into the book just for time and space, but I learned a lot about the far right, but I do think that this version of the far right ONA is very important to people to understand, and you want to see what's coming over the horizon, I think, and this might be one of those things.
So much information, and like you said, also well documented. I can't thank you enough for writing the book, the contribution, and making the time to chat with me and tell others about it. I hope to talk to you again, I hope, in the future, and I hope everything's good for you. Thanks for coming on, William.
Thanks, man. It's great to be with you again. Take care.
Man, oh man, he comes through every time. If you have not checked out the Smiley Face Killers, it was mind-blowing. And with the global death cult, this is a 1-2 punch, especially with possible connections. Both of these are things that he has tackled as an investigative journalist, and I think he has just reminded us all that there's true evil out there, and the lengths that they're willing to go is beyond anything I can wrap my head around. I'm just honored that he came on. Definitely recommend getting the book. It's on Kindle, and it is offered in traditional style. And I got mine off Amazon. I got both. They're awesome. Highly recommend it. And until next time, guys, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off.